Jai Jai Radhe, Jai Jai Shyam, Jai 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 Vrindavan. Jai Jai Radhe, Jai Jai Radhe, Jai Jai Shyam, Jai Jai Shyam. Jai Jai Radhe, Jai Jai Radhe, Jai Jai Shyam, Jai Jai Shyam. Jai Jai Radhe, Jai Jai Radhe, Jai Jai Shyam, Jai Jai Shyam. Jai Jai Radhe, Jai Jai Radhe, Jai Jai Shyam, Jai Jai Shyam. Jai Jai Radhe, Jai Jai Shyam, Jai 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 Vrindavan Dham. Jai Jai Radhe, Jai Jai Shyam, Jai 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 Vrindavan. Jaya Jaya Prabhupada, Prabhupada, Prabhupada. Jaya Jaya Prabhupada, Jaya Jaya Prabhupada, Prabhupada, Prabhupada. Jaya Jaya Prabhupada, Nitai Gaura Haripad, 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 Nitai Gaura Haripad. Harinam Sankirtan Ki Jai. All right, I'll try sharing now. I think I should be able to. Yes, this is working. Thank you so much. And loading. All right. Hare Krishna. Can somebody please confirm that you're able to see my screen, please?
We can see it fine.
Okay, thank you, Prabhu. And so, first of all, my obeisances to all the wonderful Vaishnavas and Vaishnavis who are gathered here. Vanchakalpataru vyascha kripa sindhu vyayavacha patitanam pavanebhyo Vaishnavebhyo namo namo. So typically at the beginning of the Srimad Bhagavatam class, well, for that matter of fact, any class, Srila Prabhupada's standard or his the process was to sing Jai Radha Madhava. But because it was Gita Nagari, I thought this would be a nice tribute to His Holiness Bhakti Tirtha Swami Maharaj. And this was his final kirtan, which he sang, Jai Jai Radhe Jai Jai Shyam. So I wanted to acknowledge that. And then a few other acknowledgements. As you can see, Gira Swami Maharaj is over here, and he is my spiritual master. So whatever little bit of knowledge and experience I've gained is entirely because of his mercy. So I wanted to offer my obeisances to him and share that acknowledgement. And some of today's classes are going to be actually most of the content is going to be taken from at least a couple of different lectures. It was really a series of lectures, one series given by His Holiness Bhanu Swami Maharaj, as you can see over here in the middle. And then Bhakti Vigyan Swami Maharaj also contributed to a few such lectures. And just a context over here, at the bottom over here, Yathaditam Yathamati. So the context over here is, Sutta Goswami is asked by the sages of Naimisharanya to recite whatever he had heard at the assembly of Sukdev Goswami. And he says these wonderful prose, and he essentially is saying that, look, I will speak to the extent of my understanding and knowledge and realization, and of course my memory as well. And so this is my prayer at your lotus feet as well. If you think that there is something which is incorrect or not properly stated, please just jump right in and correct it, and we can go from there. So now, keeping with tradition, I will very, very briefly sing Jai Radha Madhava, and then we'll get into the actual class. Okay. Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari Jaya Gopijana Vallabha Girivaradhari Jaya Gopijana Vallabha Girivaradhari Yashodanandana Brajana Ranjana Yashodanandana Brajana Ranjana Yamuna Tira Vanachari Yamuna Tira Vanachari Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Vihari Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Vihari Jaya Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadhar Srivasa Bhakta Vrinda Jaya Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadhar Srivasa Bhakta Vrinda Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama 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 Hare 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 Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama 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 Hare 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 Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama 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 Hare 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 Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama 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 Hare 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 Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama 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 Hare 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 Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama 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 Hare Hare Jaya Jaya Prabhupada Prabhupada Jaya Jaya Prabhupada Jaya Jaya Prabhupada Jaya Jaya Prabhupada Nitai Gaura Haribo Nitai Gaura Nitai Gaura Haribo Nitai Gaura Harinam Sankirtan Ki Jai Jai Shri Prabhupada Jai Gaur Premanandi Hari Bol. All right.
Prabhu,
So,
before you start, I would like to briefly introduce you to our audience. This is Pandit Srivasa Prabhu. As I sent a little bit of a bio, he's a disciple of Giriraj Swami and instrumental in the area of Cincinnati, Columbus, Indianapolis, and Lexington, Kentucky, and developing the congregation. He's a very staunch follower of Srila Prabhupada, and he's quite learned, and he's honoring us by speaking to us for farmers and Gitanagari. So please take it away. Sorry for the interruption.
Prabhu, thank you for the very kind words. And to be very honest, I'm doing this for my own edification. I honestly have no qualification, and you will get to know that as soon as I start speaking. So again, as I had mentioned earlier, if there's anything that you think is either out of line or the content is irrelevant or not properly stated, please feel free to jump right in. And I'm here to also learn from all of you. So with that being said, let's get into it. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Narayanam Namaskritya Naram Chaiva Narottamam Devim Saraswatim Vyasam Tato Jayamudiraye. So, well, today we have two texts, and they're kind of related. So what I'll do is, and these are written in prose. And there are some segments of the Srimad Bhagavatam which cannot be recited or sung. And so we'll try our best to, or at least I'll try my best to say them or to recite them, however they're written. And then we'll do both of them, and then we'll do the translations, and then I'll do the purport of the second one. The first one doesn't have a purport, and then we'll get into some thorough discussion, okay? So Srimad Bhagavatam, Canto 5, Chapter 9, text number 5. Sachapi tad-uha pitra sannidhav eva sadrichinam eva sma karoti chandamsi adhyapaishyam saha vyaritipi sapranavasiras tripadim savitrim graishma vasantikan masan adhiyanam api asamaveta rupam grahayam asa. And I'll do 596 as well right now, and then we'll get back to the translations. Evam swatanuja atmani anuraga veshita chitta sauchadhyayana vratanyama gurva anala shushrush shanadi apakurvanuka karmani anabhiyuktani api samausistena bhavyam iti asad agraha putram anusyasya swayam tavad anadhigata manoratha kale na pramattena swayam griha eva pramatta upasahari samritaha. Okay, so now we'll do the translations and purports by His Divine Grace, A.C. Bhaktivedanta, Srila Prabhupada. Jai Srila Prabhupada. Translation. Jar Bharat behaved before his father like a fool. Despite his father's adequately instructing him in Vedic knowledge, he behaved in that way so that his father would know that he was unfit for instruction and would abandon the attempt to instruct him further. He would behave in a completely opposite way. Although instructed to wash his hands after evacuating, he would wash them before. Nevertheless, his father wanted to give him Vedic instructions during the spring and summer. He tried to teach him the Gayatri mantra along with Omkara and Viharati. And after 4 months, his father still was not successful in instructing him. The Brahmana father of Jar Bharat considered his son his heart and soul, and therefore he was very much attached to him. He thought it wise to educate his son properly, and being absorbed in this unsuccessful endeavor, he tried to teach his son the rules and regulations of Brahmacharya, including the execution of Vedic vows, cleanliness, study of the Vedas, the regulative methods, service to the spiritual master, and the method of offering a fire sacrifice. He tried his best to teach his son in this way, but all his endeavors failed. In his heart, he hoped that his son would be a learned scholar, but all his attempts were unsuccessful. Like everyone, this Brahmana was attached to his home, and he had forgotten that someday he would die. Death, however, was not forgetful. At the proper time, death appeared and took him away. And now we will do the purport. Those too attached to family life who forget that death comes in the future to take them away, become attached and unable to finish their duty as human beings. The duty of human life is to solve all the problems of life, but instead, people remain attached to family affairs and duties. Although they forget death, death will not forget them. Suddenly, they will be kicked off the platform of a peaceful family life. One may forget that he has to die, but death never forgets. Death comes always at the right time. The Brahmana father of Jada wanted to teach his son the process of brahmacharya, but he was unsuccessful due to his son's unwillingness to undergo the process of Vedic advancement. Jada was simply concerned with returning home, back to Godhead, by executing devotional service through Shravanam, Kirtanam, Vishnu. He did not care for the Vedic instructions of his father. When one is fully interested in the service of the Lord, he does not need to follow all the regulative principles enunciated in the Vedas. Of course, for an ordinary man, the Vedic principles are imperative. No one can avoid them. But when one has attained the perfection of devotional service, it is not very important to follow the Vedic principles. Lord Krishna advised Arjuna to ascend to the platform of Nishchaigunya, the transcendental position above the Vedic principles. Nishchaigunya Vishaya Veda, Nishchaigunyo Bhavarjuna, Nirdandva Nityas Sattvasto, Niryoga Shema Atmavan. The Vedas mainly deal with the subject of the three modes of material nature. Rise above these modes, O Arjuna. Be transcendental to all of them. Be free from all dualities and from all anxieties for gain and safety, and be established in the self. Om Ajnanatimirandasya Jnananjanashalakaya Chakshanun Militamena Tasmai Shri Gurave Namaha. Jai Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadhar Srivasa Adi Gaura Bhaktavinda. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. So, as we can see from Jarbhara's example, he was definitely not at all interested in learning anything with regards to the Vedic literature, or the Vedic processes, the procedures, the niyams, and so on. But there is a reason behind that. And so we very, very briefly, for maybe just 4 or 5 minutes, talk about the history of Jarbharat, as I think most of us already know the history, but it behooves us to repeat it. So Jarbhara's previous life was that of a deer, but the more relevant one was that of Bharat Maharaj 2 lifetimes ago. And Bharat Maharaj was not an ordinary person. He was a descendant of Swayambhuva Manu. I think he was, if I'm not mistaken, 4 descendants removed from Swayambhuva Manu. It may be even 5. And he, in his practice, attained the level of bhava. And although he attained the level of bhava, towards the final stages of his life, he witnessed an incident regarding a deer who then gave birth to a fawn, and he got attached to the fawn because the mother deer was killed by a tiger. And through his attachments grew stronger and stronger. And then, unfortunately, at the time of his death, he started thinking about the deer and what would happen to the deer when he was no longer there. And subsequently, in his next life, he got the body of a deer. And but at the same time, the Lord, as we all know, says in Bhagavad Gita 9:31, Name Bhaktya Pranashyati. So the Lord always protects his devotees. And so in the context of that protection, the Lord gave him the benediction of being able to recall his previous life, as well as his previous lives. And so as a deer, he stayed near the same place of hermitage that he already was inhabiting. And then once he left the body of the deer, he took birth as Jar Bharat, and or as really Bharat. And Jar is just a colloquial slang, highlighting the fact that he was not very intelligent. And so he pretends in this very lifetime that he's unintelligent because he still has the memory of what he was when he was Bharat Maharaj. And the other aspect, obviously, is that since bhakti itself is not diminished from lifetime to lifetime, you simply carry on from where you left off. He is, at least in the bhaktivas stage, in the bhavavas stage, okay? And so at this point of time, he makes a solemn vow that he is not going to make the same mistakes and get attached to anyone or anything. And therefore, he pretends to be completely unintelligent and practices detachment, okay? And there is this general expectation for people who are following a Vedic culture that we repay the debt of everybody around us who contribute to our success and to our upbringing one way or the other. But as we see over here, Srimad Bhagavatam 11.5.41, Devashi Bhutaptam Rinam Pritrinam. So essentially somebody who has completely surrendered oneself onto the Supreme Personality of Godhead and does not have to pay any of those debts and is not indebted to the demigods, sages, living beings, relatives, friends, mankind, and so on and so forth. And employing this principle, Bharat, or Jar Bharat in this case, decided that there is absolutely no reason why he has to listen to the instructions of his father, although his father was very, very well-meaning. Moving on. All right. So there is this very interesting aspect of bhava that is very nicely elaborated in Bhakti Rasamrita Sindhu. And as we can see, bhava appears much, much later in the process of bhakti, right? So Adar Shraddha Tata Sadhu Sangha Tato Bhajana Kriya, and then Anartha Nivritti, then Nishtha, Ruchi, and after that would come Asakti and then Bhava. So there's a significant amount of progress that a devotee makes in order to achieve the position or place of Bhava. And in the Eastern Division, third wave, Rupa Goswami, Srila Rupa Goswami mentions this. He first obviously talks about the second wave with, right up to Raganuga Bhakti, but then in the third wave, he starts with Bhava and he makes that broader statement that achieving the level of Bhava is very, very rare. And so the question that arises in our mind, well, there are a couple of questions. Number one is, why did Bharat Maharaj fall down? And what is probably a little bit more relevant to us is, how did he get up? How did he re-achieve his goals? And so let's, for the remainder of today's class, we'll spend time on these two aspects, these two philosophical things. So first, why did he fall down? And then there are different commentaries from different acharyas regarding why he fell down. The general principle is that this was a part of broader construct of the Lord's wish with respect to, Leela. And one can understand that. Vishwanath Chakrabarti Thakur dives a little bit deeper and he says, like, look, while that might be true, the principle that is being highlighted over here is that there is some residual anartha resulting from aparad. And aparad over here is defined as apagata radho yasmad iti aparad. So radho over here is priti, or affection. So the diminishing of affection is called aparad. And this is by itself is a very, very beautiful definition, because we naturally associate aparad with an offense. So the table which you see over here is the construct from Bhakti Vinod Thakur's Bhajana Rahasya. And the construct essentially highlights what Bhakti Vinod Thakur lists over here as the different types of anarthas. He starts with Swarupa Brahma, Brahma meaning illusion, and then Asat Trishna, Sat is eternal and Asat is obviously temporary. So thirst for temporary things, and then Aprad, offense, and Hridaya Daurbalya is weakness, and Hridaya is heart, so weaknesses of the heart. And then he further subcategorizes them into four, right? So in Swarup Brahma, he says Jiva Swarup Brahma, Paratattva Brahma. So we won't necessarily get into all of these. Sadhya Sadhana Brahma and Bhajana Virodhi Brahma, but just as a one-liner, Jiva Swarup Brahma is illusion about oneself, Paratattva Brahma is illusion about the Supreme Lord, Sadhya Sadhana Brahma is illusion about the different processes of devotional service, and Bhajan Virodhi Brahma is, okay, I'm going to do everything excepting bhajan. So illusion about chanting and about immersing oneself into the holy name. Asat Trishna, thirst for different types of objects. So one is material objects, which is Paratrika. Ahika Yeshana, which is heavenly pleasures. Thirst and desire for mystic powers, Bhuti Vancha, and liberation, Mumuksha. And I'll skip Aprad because we'll talk a little bit more about that. And then, of course, you have Hridaya Daurbalya, weaknesses of the heart. Tucha Shakti is attachment to objects which are unrelated to the Lord. And it's all actually Tucha Asakti. So Asakti is attachment, and Tucha is things which are not very valuable. Hypocrisy and deceit, Kutinati, envy at others' prosperity, Paradroha. And the one anartha which many of the acharyas, including Srila Prabhupada, stresses is probably has the longest longevity is pratishta, which is the desire for prestige and position. It's still easier to get rid of a lot of the other anarthas, excepting this one. But in the middle, the one that we skipped is aprad. And you have, again, 4 different categories of aprad, the nama aprads, seva aprad, then things that belong to Krishna and living entities. And so the definition, coming back to the definition, apagata radho yasmaditi aprad, where it makes it very interesting because what the aprad does is 2 things. One, it diminishes the affection towards the Lord. And more importantly, or equally importantly, it also weakens us to an extent that it increases our anarthas. So exactly what aprad was created by Bharat Maharaj is not mentioned in the Srimad Bhagavatam, nor at least I could not find a significant commentary on the nature of that aprad. So we'll not necessarily dwell on that. But instead, we'll focus on what Rupa Goswami says in Bhakti Rasamrita Sindhu. And he says, like, look, bhavapiya bhavam ayati Krishna preshtapa radhata. And so what he's essentially saying is that, look, by an offense against the dearest devotee of the Lord, if the offense is grave, even real bhava will be destroyed. And if the offense is medium, the bhava will turn into bhavabhas. And if the offense is slight, the bhava will become an inferior type. So we are quite certain, given the sequence of events that happened in Bharat Maharaj's life and then subsequently to Jarbhada's life, that it is probably not that the offense was grave, because his real bhava was not destroyed. He, when he came in as Jarbhada, he still was significantly exhibiting the symptoms of bhavabhas at the very least. Okay, and then in the same lines, Jiva Goswami comments on this very shloka, that by 2 types of grave offenses, offense to the dearest devotee or to Krishna himself, this is Krishna Preshta Paradataha, even real bhava is destroyed. And by medium offense, bhava becomes bhavabhas. By slight offense, the bhava becomes, it essentially degrades in category. And becoming an inferior type means that there will be degradation in terms of the 5 rasas and the 8 stages of Mahabhava to Rati. So this by itself is a very significant statement. So what he's really saying is that, look, one could be at a deep level of rasa, let's say even at a madhurya rasa, but at in the event of an offense being created, that the mood of that rasa or the one's adhikar towards that rasa can become diminished, and one could then become, more situated in Sakya rasa or even Dasya rasa, and so on and so forth. So he concludes this change of power will take place according to the seriousness of the offense. So which brings us to what is a little bit more relevant to us. Okay, so how did he get up? And the main aspect over here, and which we will now then dwell on, is that he kept his eye on the goal, and goal was achieving the love for Godhead, prema. Even as Bharat Maharaj, he was right there. He was almost there, and he had kind of kept his eye on the goal, but something from his previous life came and disturbed that and created a barrier towards that. But as Jar Bharat, he energized himself and said, okay, this is going to be my goal. And this is key for all of us in our movement, in our own lives, and so on and so forth. But what is our goal? And many times we see that, well, I won't say many people in our movement, but let's say there are, in many cases in our movement, we feel that we don't necessarily set the right goals. We start off with some idea about what we want to do, but our goal is not far enough. The roadmap is therefore winding, and it's unclear. And I got this quotation from Lewis Carroll's Alice in Wonderland, where Alice says, would you tell me, please, which way I ought to go from here? And the Cheshire Cat replies, that depends a good deal on where you want to go. I don't much care where. Then it doesn't matter which way you go, as long as I get somewhere. Oh, you're sure to do that if only you walk long enough. So for many of us, this is the case, where we don't necessarily know where we want to go. And yes, we can remain in this movement for a significant portion of our lives, and even possibly for many, many lifetimes. But we'll get somewhere, but we don't necessarily know where we'll end up. So how do we set the goal, and what goal do we set? If you look at this is essentially the ladder towards the elevation, depicting the elevation of consciousness. And at a very basic level, even prior to atheism, you have the Charvakism, which is essentially the animalistic mentality. But discounting that, from atheism, then agnosticism, well, I'm, whatever, something, it's okay, it's, whatever it is. Religiosity, a little bit now you're getting into the following of some rules, some aspects, some morality, and so on and so forth. And then you get into impersonalism. Well, the energy is all pervading. I'm energy, you're energy. The Lord doesn't really have a form, so takes different forms. The energy takes different forms, and one of the forms is the form that we end up worshiping. And then you get into sadhana bhakti, which is essentially regulated devotion, and then finally spontaneous devotion. And the goals and plateaus of each of these are different. So if we don't necessarily set our goal at the spontaneous devotion, then we will end up at one of these levels. And more importantly, we will not necessarily know what follows that level. And there are 2 or 3 characteristics of this ladder. So one is, if our goals are not necessarily worked on and predefined and predetermined, and we don't make endeavor and effort towards those, then the progress, the natural progress, there is still a natural progress, assuming we don't commit too many offenses, or at least deep offenses, is significantly slow. It's very, very slow. It can take us lifetimes and thousands of lifetimes, even millions of lifetimes, to reach from the lowest level to the highest level. And the other aspect, though, is the reverse, that is the degradation of our consciousness instead of elevation, the degradation is can also happen and can happen very fast. So what exactly should we do about it? Can any devotee be immediately elevated from this lower level or even the lowest level to the highest level? Yes, they can be. But then there are a couple of aspects to this, couple of nuances to this that we have to keep in mind. And so if we borrow from Bhaktivinoda Thakur's expertise and his vision from Sri Chaitanya Shikshamrita, and he says something very powerful. He essentially is saying that, look, the power of the Prema Bhakta is unlimited, okay? So the Prema Bhakta, if he's merciful, can transfer his power to any type of person. So if you go back to the ladder, if we are able to associate and meet and secure the mercy of a Prema Bhakta who is situated in spontaneous devotion, then simply by his mercy, we can be elevated from any level to that level. So that is the power of the Prema Bhakta. He can transfer his power to any type of person. The Bhava Bhakta, being merciful, can instill power in the Sadhana Bhaktas so that they can assume a position similar to his own. And by the strength of his personality, the Bhava Bhakta can raise materialistic people who have gained some qualification due to previous deeds to the level of Ruchi. So the Bhava Bhakta is a lot more careful, and Bhaktivinoda Thakur is also very careful in putting those conditions over here. So he puts a couple of different conditions. So one, he talks about the sadhana bhaktas, and he says that, look, if the Bhava Bhakta is if the sadhana bhakta is able to properly associate and gain the mercy of the Bhava Bhakta, then definitely they can reach the level of Bhava. But however, if this person is not a sadhana bhakta, if this is a materialistic person, further lower down in our ladder, then also they can gain some qualification. Then they can come to the level of ruchi. They cannot come to the level of bhava, but they can certainly come to the level of ruchi. However, there is a precondition. The precondition is that they have to have some adhikar. So they have gained some qualification due to previous deeds. And this qualification is further detailed as, they could be sukriti, based on, karma, and agyat sukriti carries a little bit more weight than gyat sukriti, and so on and so forth. But nevertheless, it is certainly possible for them to get some benefit and some elevation in their sadhana. And then further on, Bhaktivinoda Thakur says, Vaidhi and Raganuga sadhana bhaktas can instill faith in materialistic people. So now you're talking about Shraddha in materialistic people who have attained qualification by previous deeds. So there is still a pre-qualification required, again, Sukriti. So assuming there is some bank balance in the Sukriti bank, and then Vaidhi and Raganuga sadhana bhaktas, which is probably the significant majority of our movement, and they can still instill some faith. And therein lies the impetus for us to raise ourselves to the level of bhava. Because if you're really going to expand this movement at both broadly and deeply, then at the most, if we remain in the Vaidhi and Raganuga sadhana stages ourselves, imagine, like not just Vaidhi, even the Raganuga sadhana stages ourselves, at the most, the maximum influence that we can have over our communities and congregations is that we can raise them to the level of Shraddha, and that's about it, okay? And that too by dint of our teaching and example. So then this is certainly a big scale problem statement for us. And then he further clarifies this problem statement, and he says, all right, let's go deeper into this. And he says, like, what is the reason? Why is it that we are not able to get to a higher stage much more quickly? And then there are several reasons he gives. And he says, look, when a person is qualified to ascend to the next step, he must also give up attachment to the old step. And this by itself is a very significant statement. It's essentially almost like literally climbing the ladder, where you cannot climb if you still have one foot on the, on the rung, which is on the lower rung, essentially. So you must give up attachment to the old step. The tendency to cling to the old stage is called niyamagraha, clinging to outmoded rules. And because of this, outcasts, so now this is very important. He's saying outcasts, so the people who have absolutely no interest, so animalistic mentalities, they have no respect for atheistic moralists. The atheistic moralists have no respect for the pseudo-theistic moralists. The pseudo-theists have no respect for the theistic moralists. The theistic moralists have no respect for the Vaidhi bhaktas. And the Vaidhi bhaktas have no respect for the Ragatmika bhakti. Okay? And because of such habit, the followers of Varnashram often do not respect the Vaidhi bhaktas. So why is this a significant statement or series of statements over here? This essentially tells us is that we don't really know who to associate with. So if you go back over here to the previous statements that he makes, if only we are able to properly identify and associate with the Bhava Bhaktas, then we are at least we are guaranteed that we will be able to get into a position of ruchi, okay, if not Bhava, right? And if we, however, cannot identify them, then we end up essentially disrespecting them. In our society, ISKCON, we actually have Bhava Bhaktas, but more often than not, we either don't identify them, or we don't associate with them, or if we get some association, we don't know how to associate with them. We don't, the quality of the association is lacking in some form or fashion. And that's, and there are a couple of reasons for that, which we'll dive again deeper into our subsequent slides over here. So let's actually get there. So one of the things over here is, well, we all worship Krishna, but in which mood do we worship the Lord? So we can worship the Lord in the Shaktya mood, in the, in the mood of, the Surya, in the mode of Ganesha. Oh, my dear Lord, there are so many things going wrong with my life. Can you please help me out? Can you, help remove these obstacles, and so on and so forth. My dear Lord, I don't want anything. I'm not attached to anything. I just want to be out. I don't, so a mood of rejection. So, which is essentially nothing but Shaiva Dharma and then Narayan. So we worship Krishna, but in which mood? And Krishna being Bhavagrahi Janardana, he also reciprocates with us in that particular mood. So, okay, so this is how you approach me, and this is how you get whatever it is that you're looking for, okay? And these particular moods, and we'll go back to the ladder and I'll show you how these moods affect these different, that entire ladder that we're talking about. But these basic moods are the major contaminations to the path of bhakti. And then they can be further segmented into two, obviously the karma and the jnana. And Srila Rupa Goswami, obviously this is one of those famous shlokas, Bhukti Murti Sriya Yavat Pishachriti Vartate, right? So these are the two witches, Bhukti and Mukti, so karma and jnana. So the material desire to enjoy the material world and the desire to become liberated. These two, they're considered to be these two witches, and they haunt one like ghosts. So if you now superimpose these two moods into, and the mood with which we worship the Lord, this is where we end up. So if we are looking at the Kama Dharma Artha moods, which is essentially the karmic moods, the karma-centric moods, then the moods with which we worship the Lord is either the Shakta Dharma, that, give me this, give me that, and so on and so forth. The Saurya Dharma, the 7 highly effective ways that a Vaishnav can behave. leadership principles through Vaishnavism, things like that, that you can incorporate in your life, time management, things like that. We must have heard so many different lectures on that, but that's coming from the mood of Sora Dharma. That's not coming from pure bhakti. Ganapati Dharma, we just explained. So these are karma-centric modes through which we approach the Supreme Personality of Godhead. And on the other hand, if we have the jnana-centric modes, then we end up with, I don't want anything, and, I just want liberation, or I just want to meditate, and so on and so forth. But the priti, the affection, the love for the Lord is somewhat either missing, or it's reduced. It's not optimal. Okay. And so we have to overcome these in order to get into the position of Jaiva Dharma or Swadharma, the pure love of God. So let's go further deeper into both the Karma Mishra and the Jnana Mishra Bhaktis. So again, borrowing from Bhaktivinoda Thakur's Sri Chaitanya Shikshamrita, he basically says over here that I am an infinitesimal soul, right? And this is how the Karma Mishra Bhakta thinks. I am an infinitesimal soul controlled by dharma and adharma, and I'm always desiring happiness. I have a relation with the universe as an enjoyer of the enjoyed. This is still so much me-centric, as you can see already, right? There is one portion of the material world which is in the essence of pure enjoyment. I will go there and attain perfect happiness. So it's the mood, the statements over here, the natural sentiment is still very much directed towards the self and not necessarily directed towards the Lord. So the Lord is mentioned. My relation to the Lord is this. The Lord is the creator, I am the creator. The Lord is the bestower, I am the receiver. The Lord is the maintainer, I am the maintained. The Lord is the protector, I am the protected. The Lord is the powerful, I am the weak. The Lord is the destroyer and can be destroyed. And so on. The Lord is the lawmaker, and the follower of the laws. The Lord is the judge, and the judge. If the Lord is pleased, my suffering disappears, and I have the possibility of attaining happiness. So the position of the Lord is still stated, and none of those are incorrect as such, right? But the mood, the sentiment is still very much directed towards how can I, dissipate my unhappiness and my suffering and get into real happiness. Okay, so that is Karma Mishra Bhakti sentiments. Okay, and in this sentiment, the Lord essentially becomes the limb of karma, which means essentially that he becomes an instrument through which I can get some benefit. Okay, so Bhaktivinoda Thakur over here further states that whoever becomes bound to the first solution, which is the Karma Mishra Bhakti, essentially takes karma as the chief means and establish the Lord as a limb of karma. The result, obviously, it has no eternal qualities, right? These are very temporary, right? And there is obviously no display of independence of the Lord in these lives. So this is very, very interesting, because we are thinking as if we are approaching the Lord as if we are dependent on the Lord. And yet we are saying that really the dependence on the rule predominates. So the Lord will take me there. So he will do it. He must do this. So the independence of the Lord is questioned over here. And so obviously, as we all know, many of these people, they are called karmis. Okay. And what is our second state now? So if we now look at our second part of the solution, which is the Jnana Mishra Bhakti, now you're looking at a lot of speculation. Some of it is mental, some of it is philosophical, some of it is just spiritual speculation, and so on and so forth. So a person gives up theistic morality and progresses to impersonal conceptions. I am a knowing object. Brahman is a knowing object. I am a portion of Brahman. Anything material must be avoided. Matter is the opposite of Brahman. I am Brahman, but by illusion, I am thinking that I am an individual soul. There is nothing except Brahman. Brahman is all pervading, essentially. Whatever I see as matter is due to ignorance. By thinking of myself as Brahman, I will attain impersonal liberation. This is the final goal of the individual. So, interestingly enough, in the same treatise, Bhaktivinoda Thakur considers Jainism and Buddhism as as other extensions of Shaivism. And if you now interpose this definition onto those terminologies of Buddhism and Jainism, you'll see that yes, they are they complete, right? And so this is certainly a problem with the Jnana Mishra Bhakti. And then his commentary on what the general problem is over here is that he says that this kind of a bhakta, he aims at destruction of the self. So he's saying that I no longer exist as an individual. So he's definitely destroying his own character, his nature, his peculiarity, his particularity, right? His identity. And he performs false renunciation, right? So we see that very much under Shaivism, where the Markat Vairagya is prevalent, right? And this kind of bhakta, he neither establishes himself in this world, nor does he finally attain a stable non-material position. And so he uses this terminology, spiritual society, and he says, spiritual suicide. And he essentially says, it's like, look, the prayojana, the reason, the whys of these jnana kandis is that their minds are completely filled with this negative thought patterns. And therefore, he thinks that his life is useless. And subsequently, he renders his life useless. And because of this mindset that, okay, my life is useless, he is committing spiritual suicide. So therefore, we see, if you look at that, superimpose that those two thoughts and those two problems and those, two solutions to our problem statement of why we are not able to elevate towards consciousness, we'll see that, well, we'll be stuck in something very, very temporary, or we will be committing spiritual suicide at some point of time in our existence, okay? So this is a significant drawback of that, to that gradual elevation of consciousness. In Bhaktya Loka, Bhaktivinoda Thakur now starts talking about the real solution, okay, the deeper solutions. And he says that, look, in our society, and he's talking about at that point of time, and if you think about it, this is very much relevant even in our point of time, even probably more so. So some people lament that they have not attained devotion to Krishna, right? Even after practicing for many, many years, decades, and so on and so forth. But at the same time, they do not make any real attempt to raise themselves to the level of Krishna Bhakti. Okay, so they remain bound to one of the levels without due cause. Like, okay, you know what, I'm comfortable here, I'm okay here, please don't preach to me like this. You take care of your bhakti, I'll take care of mine. That's the general principle that many of us follow. And they do not make any attempt to progress. And this is the aspect that he calls out, is because we are very much attached to the rules of where we are or where we were. And that is the niyamagraha that he's talking about. So if a person stops at one step, so how can he expect to progress to the top? Obvious statement, right? So many devotees on the level of Vaidhi Bhakti, they make no attempt to progress to Bhava Bhakti and lament that they have not attained Bhava. And how will they? Many people remain attached to the rules of Varnashrama and are indifferent to Bhava and Prema. This is an obstacle to their own advancement. So he then further says that, look, we are so attached to the what's and the how's, but the what and how is actually a subsequent part of it, right? What we should be attached to and what we should continuously ask ourselves is the why. So why am I doing this? Why should I do this? Why should I progress? And so that prayojana, if it is properly established in one's heart and mind and psychology and practice, then we can keep course correcting anytime we realize that we are missing the progress towards that prayojana. And instead, we talk about the what's and the how's, the adhikar and the sadhana. And so in the Tattva Sutra, he further talks about this. And he says the symptom of actual worship is to make advancement on the path of raga. So when we evaluate ourselves, if we meditate and take stock of our bhakti periodically, and I'm assuming you all do, I mean, I've started doing that in this year 2023 periodically, like every few weeks or so, sit down with a notebook and pen and say, okay, this is my realization. This is what I feel when I see the deities at my house, or when I worship them, or when I go to the temple, when I meet the devotees, and so on and so forth. And the symptom is to make advancement on the path of raga. What is the feeling that you feel? What is the sentiment that you, not necessarily how well you're doing this, okay? And he further states that if one remains entangled in other processes of worship, they will never achieve the goal of life. He's very strict about this. And then going back to his Shikshamrita, Chaitanya Shikshamrita, he essentially says, look, those who are fortunate to receive the teachings of Lord Chaitanya, however, can progress very quickly. And in a short lifespan, a person can easily progress from varnashrama to prema. And so he's kind of giving the solution over here as well, that receive the teachings. And the receive the teachings obviously is a process, not necessarily just an instruction, like how to receive, who to receive it from, what's the mode that you accept it, how do you practice it, and so on and so forth. And those who have taken shelter of the rules of gradual development do not have to wait for another birth to elevate themselves. Okay. And so I wanted to pause here or stop here and hear questions and comments and feedback based on this. And maybe we can go from there. Anyone, any feedback, any questions, any comments? Actually, I would love to hear any comments.
Hare Krishna Prabhu.
Yes.
My name is Agari Krishnadas. Thank you so much, Prabhu, for that insightful class in terms of explaining the indifference to advancement. So is your analysis of the cause of Judge Bharat refusing to be instructed by his father, that it's not just that he just sees the equality of all living entities. So he's not just considering that, okay, this is my father in this lifetime, but in other lifetimes he could have been something else. So I'm just going to disregard that relationship. It's more that he actually wants to elevate himself from bhava to prema because it's an actual obstacle. The karmakanda instructions from his father, they have now become an obstacle in terms of his advancement. Is that really what you're saying?
Yes, you could say that. And there are 5 aspects actually that are mentioned by different commentators. Sridhar Swami mentions 3, and then subsequently, I believe Baladev Vidyabhushan mentions a couple of them. So one is, the 2 of them are like you mentioned. So the actions which are coming from karmakanda activities, he doesn't want to take, any kind of reactions to those actions. So that's one aspect of it. The second one is by following those instructions, he is giving weight to the Vedic teachings, to karmakanda activities. So he does not want to unnecessarily commit offenses or accrue negative points, so to speak, by supporting something which he doesn't necessarily believe is the highest form. Then the attachment to his father is another aspect of it. And number 4 is once he was thinking that once he achieves those qualifications, then professionally he will be qualified to execute the roles of a brahmana, and he will be expected to do that. And if he doesn't, then that is a problem, because he's then neglecting his varnashram dharma. And the 5th one, which is a lot more esoteric, is there's no reason for him to do it. And if he neglects that higher philosophy that, hey, there is no reason for me to do it, then he's not giving sufficient weight to that esoteric aspect that I should not be doing this. Okay. And so those are the general 5 things. There might be a 6th or 7th thing that I may not remember, but those are the 5 things that come to my mind as to why he decides that he will not do it. Okay. Right.
Thank you so much, Prabhu. Really
Sure.
appreciate it.
Yes, yes. Okay. Any other questions or comments? I know I ended a little bit abruptly, so I have one last slide, and I wanted to show that to you regarding Bhaktivinoda Thakur's final solution. And he essentially says that, look, forgetting Krishna is never allowed. So keep that in mind. So that is the key. So if you have to progress, then everything that we do, every aspect of what we do, the prayojana that is there, how we define that prayojana is through this principle of never being able to forget principle. So this is the main prescription in mind while advancing. And he talks about this in Sajjana Toshani, and it's a beautiful, beautiful treatise if you ever have the chance. These are all available online free, and I'll share this deck also with all of you so that you can see the references. And he talks about this main prescription, and he says like attachment for this prescription is important, but attachment for the prescription of the previous level and accepting the prescriptions of the next level, these need to be adjusted. Okay, so attachment for the prescription of the previous level, give it up and accept the prescriptions for the next level. Okay, and otherwise we will be guilty of niyam agraha. Okay, all right, so if there aren't any other questions, let me know, and then we can end by offering Vaishnava pranams.
Prabhu, I just have one comment.
Yes,
Just-
Prabhuji.
Just want to say that I'm absolutely blown away by your presentation. This was spectacular, absolutely stellar. I'm really, really deeply impressed and really, really glad that I had the opportunity to hear this today. I thank you very much for doing this, and I beg you, please, to come back more often and do this again for us. This was really, really wonderful. Also, I'm hoping that you will share your slide set, because I tried to copy them. I missed one of them, and I don't know which one it was, but I'd really like to have that. That I think would be beneficial for me. And
So thank you for your kind words of encouragement, Prabhu. And yes, I will convert the slides into a PDF, and I'll send that to you to Sarvatma Prabhu right after this call. So within the next 7 minutes, he should have them.
thank you very much. Hare
Thank you.
Krishna.
Hare Krishna, Prabhu. If there isn't anything else, I would like to end by offering Vaishnava pranams to all of you. Vancha kalpatarubhyascha kripa sindhubhya cha patitanam
I would like, and in the name of all the devotees who are present and absent at here in Gitanagari, to thank you for your fabulous presentation. And yes, I'll hopefully I'll get a commitment from you that we will do this again.
I'm your puppet, Prabhu. However you pull the strings is how I will end up dancing. Thank you, Prabhu.
Thank you. All glories to
Thank
Srila
you.
Prabhupada. Hare
All
Krishna.
glories to Srila Prabhupada. Hare Krishna. Hare Bol. Hare Krishna.
Thank you.
Hare Krishna. Hare Bol.